Welcome SOS members to our special presentation with Liz Walker from Clean Air Methow. Let's do a little roundtable first and just introduce ourselves. My name is Lisa with Aging and Adult Care, and we'll let Tanya introduce herself.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for putting this on. I'm excited to find out some information here. We have had a lot of smoke around the valley, so pleased that you're doing this. So thank you. My name's Tanya. I'm with Health Alliance, and we are a Medicare Advantage plan in the Wenatchee Valley area. We serve Douglas County, Okanagan, Chelan, and Grant counties. And just wanted to put a little bug out there that it is annual enrollment period, and I'm sure that you guys already know all that. But yeah, if you guys have any questions at all, I'm always here as a resource and to help. We do education with Medicare as well as sell the Medicare Advantage plans. So not just geared towards selling. We want to help people understand. So yes, so please reach out to me and I'll put my information in the chat. And we also have online a Prepare for Medicare webinar, and that is coming up, and on the 19th of October. So sorry, I don't have that information. I will put that in the chat as well.
That'd be great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Was it Anna, your assistant? Was that her name? I'm terrible with names. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, she's not my assistant. Anna, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sorry.
Oh, no worries. Hi, Lisa and Tanya. My name is Anna Mounsey, and I'm the program coordinator for Clean Air Methow. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, Clean Air Methow addresses community public health needs as it pertains to air quality within the Methow Valley and Okanagan County. You may have seen our communications campaign this summer as highlighting smoke readiness and creating a smoke ready community. And what a smoke ready community is a population that knows its air pollution and how to protect themselves, knows the exposure and knows how to protect those most vulnerable. And we also address outdoor burning in the winter. And you can find us on the social medias at Clean Air Methow and then on our website, cleanairmethow.org. So I'm looking forward to this presentation from Liz.
Awesome. Thank you, Anna. All right, Liz, go ahead and introduce yourself and we'll get going.
Great. Thanks so much. Let me see if I can talk and share my screen, get going at the same time so we can look at these. So I am Liz Walker, and I have spent about the last 9 years growing Clean Air Methow from a fairly grassroots volunteer effort into now a pretty substantial program that is housed within the nonprofit Methow Valley Citizens Council. But as Anna mentioned, all of our work is now countywide and even region-wide. And so I'm a toxicologist by training. This work has been really phenomenal for me because I was really drawn to that profession and area and trained at the University of Washington in the Department of Environmental and Occupational Health Sciences in this place of environmental health, whereby we understand that the connections between human health and environmental health are really inseparable. And I am a resident of the Methow Valley and living here for the last decade and raising 2 children. Summers and how they are changing with regards to fires and smoke and heat are really different than certainly the summers that I experienced when I was growing up. And we have good data to suggest that we're going to unfortunately continue these trends towards more fires, smokier summers, hotter weather, more unpredictable weather, extreme weather events. And it's really an honor to work in this space and to think about how to continue to keep Okanagan County and our region a beautiful, wonderful place to be and to live, and what we need to do to adapt to a changing climate. So today, I'm really excited to be here to talk about becoming smoke ready and what that means. And let me see if I can get us up to a full slide. Sorry, my overlapping sets of PowerPoint and Zoom controls here messing with me. There we go. Let's move that. And then we can go to here. All right, so can you guys see the slides now full screen?
Yes.
Great. Awesome. So without any further ado, try to go to the next slide. Okay. So I like to start with this slide, and that's for Clean Air Methow's work and other initiatives I'm involved in with environmental health in our region, really start from this premise that everyone deserves clean air as a fundamental right, and that we need clean air in the same way that we need clean water or other natural resources to support a healthy, full life. And so the work that we do really focuses on improving air quality wherever we can and protecting health wherever necessary. And I like to start with acknowledgement that none of this work would be possible without a multitude of partners. These are both at the state and federal level, who participate with insight and guidance and funding in many cases, such as the Washington Department of Ecology and the EPA. We have academic partners at the University of Washington who've done some really exciting research in wildfire smoke with, but mostly it's our local partners, including Aging Adult Care of Central Washington, without whom so much of what we do would not be possible. And you'll see what that looks like in the rest of the presentation here. So as a toxicologist, I really don't like to ever start with really bad news that ultimately ends up scaring people. And so while I am going to begin by talking about the severity and what we know about wildfires and wildfire smoke, the good news is that we are going to move towards good news, which is that we have some really simple and effective interventions. We know how we can better live and adapt and build resiliency towards these things. So just know that that's where we're headed. And, I'll note, and I know Lisa, you and Tanya, it sounds like you as well, you work directly with people who are intimately impacted and affected by wildfire. And what we know and observe, and there's sort of a growing body of evidence around the mental health and well-being impacts of living in disaster-prone areas where we annually anticipate having wildfires and wildfire smoke. But there's a lot of uncertainty associated with that. We don't know if it's going to be in our backyard. We don't know if it's going to be far away. We don't know how long they'll last or how dramatically we'll be impacted. But as Lisa, we were chatting before we started the call, wildfires and wildfire smoke are absolutely just a part of life here. And I think, again, the good news is that there's a lot of energy going into how to build resiliency towards staying safe, and better than that, really continuing to thrive despite our changing climate. So this is just some data. These are true to our real life observations, but our fire season locally, which you can sort of see with the little black squiggle circling our region, gray indicates there's not enough good data, but we are in proximity to another area that is very similar to ours, so we can extrapolate that dark red also pertains to us. So in the last 50 years or so, we've seen almost a 200% increase in fire weather days. This corresponds to about a 14-day lengthening of our fire season as well. And fires make smoke. And so another good piece of data that I think we want to really let sink in a little bit is that, again, if you look at that area circled on the figure to the right where it's labeled 2050, is that we're also anticipated to have our smoke wave intensity increase by 2 to 5-fold by the year 2050. And so that means both the intensity with regards to how severe the smoke actually is associated with wildfires, as well as the length of how long those smoke waves last. So anyone who's been here for some time knows that we've had some pretty bad years. And unfortunately, we're going to have to look forward to probably more bad years like that, and years that may even be worse than what we've seen in the recent decades. And we're living this in real time, right? This is from yesterday. I presented for the Okanagan Board of Health. And so I just grabbed a couple of the slides there for grounding us in our present day reality. Today it's October 12th. This is yesterday's real-time USA city ranking for the worst air quality. And we see our neighbors down in Leavenworth up there at number 3, and Winthrop was at number 7. We have hot and dry conditions expected for the next 2 weeks. Okanagan County just extended their burn ban through the end of the month, which means that fire activity for existing fires is going to likely continue, and our risk of new fires will persist. And unfortunately, our meteorologists have also acknowledged that this means that without a strong wetting rain or a significant shift in this weather pattern, we're unlikely to see any air quality improvements probably through the end of the month. And this is somewhat unusual. You know, October is typically really a shift into some different weather patterns where we're truly moving into higher humidity and wetter falls. But again, this may not be so unusual into the future. So here's a little snapshot yesterday of a number of air quality monitors. We'll get into in a moment the different colors, but all you need to know is green is good, green is healthy air. And then the darker red or purple you get, the worse the air quality is. It's being reflected. So yesterday, the Methow had some pretty bad air. The rest of the county over here was actually remarkably good. And that's how wildfire smoke works, right? It really is so changeable depending on what direction the wind is blowing and what kind of high pressure or low pressure systems we have. And again, this is just some data demonstrating, how bad it has been in the past. So 2018 was a really rough year for a lot of Okanagan County. TWISP actually experienced 40 days of unhealthy air quality, 40 consecutive days. And 40 days is a really long time. When I usually show this, I ask people to try to recall what 40 days ago, what date that was and what we were doing. So that would have been what, like the beginning of September for us, September 1st. And just thinking about what 40 days, you know, if you'd been living in unhealthy air quality where you couldn't see the sun, it wasn't safe to go outside for 40 consecutive days. Again, you know, I give these presentations to people who haven't lived in those conditions. Most of us in Central and Eastern Washington have actually lived through this. And once it's over, we typically want to forget about it as quickly as possible. And I'm not trying to in any way have us relive the difficulties of it, but rather just to, again, appreciate this is a really significant event for all of us, smoke waves like this. And as I said, we're likely to see more of them. The other interesting bit about living in Central and Eastern Washington, and this is the conversation I have with lots of folks, is that we are really accustomed to smoke. We have a high cultural tolerance for it, and for a number of reasons. One, wildfires and wildfire smoke have been around for a long time. We live in a fire-adapted ecosystem in most of the state where wildfires are a natural part of how forests renew and regenerate themselves. Indigenous tribes intentionally lit fires as a way to manage those forests for many, many years. And, you know, to some extent, as humans, we have evolutionarily grown up with fire and with fire and smoke and are somewhat accustomed to it. And so, you know, I often either get the question, like, is it really that bad for my health? I mean, it's just smoke. And I spend a lot of time engaging with people, asking them about how wildfire smoke affects them and whether they think it's bad or whether it really bothers them at all. And so, you know, Tanya and Lisa, you too, to put you on the spot, we might have a little discussion, I hope, later. And I do want to say, if you have any questions anytime, feel free to jump in. But this is a really, you know, this is a really interesting question for us to sort of understand risk perception in our area, because we know that that risk perception directly impacts how people may or may not be motivated to take steps to protect their health. So on the left here, I just did a little Google search real quick about wildfire smoke and health. This is something that, you know, any day if you search the news or you search the literature, we're invested in learning about this, because millions of people, as we've had the Bay Area and Seattle and Portland, all those metro areas be impacted significantly by wildfire smoke, there's a lot of attention going into trying to understand just how bad wildfire smoke is. And so, just to briefly recap, we do know wildfire smoke does have significant impacts on both physical and mental health. And we'll talk about that in a little more detail. It obviously has significant economic impacts, especially in areas that have summer tourism industries. And it has, social impacts and hits other areas of health as well, as people's lives are disrupted by fire and smoke, and we figure out how we can live with it. So the number one thing that we see with regards to what happens to health when we have wildfire smoke waves is that there are increases in all-cause mortality. And there have been a number of studies published, one of them by Matt Kadlec, reporting some of Matt Kadlec's work actually here in Washington State, where he analyzed Washington State data and demonstrated a significant rise in all-cause mortality following smoke wave events. The other bit we'll see, we'll talk about it in a minute. The other bit that we see is increases in emergency room visits, increases in hospital admissions, and increases in death due to cardiac arrest. A little less severe than actual death, we also know that wildfire smoke contributes to either the development or the worsening of existing lung and heart conditions, including bronchitis, respiratory disease and infection, asthma, and COPD. And, Lisa, you were speaking earlier about heat waves. These wildfire smoke events often are co-hazards with extreme summer heat, which we know are also quite deadly. With regards to what this means long-term, what these types of chronic exposures where we have several weeks of smoke potentially in many locations year after year after year, we don't have the evidence that has characterized on a population scale level what that actually means. What we do know is that, when we look at these acute exposures, so just say like a couple of days of exposure to wildfire smoke or a few weeks of exposure to wildfire smoke, we see these significant impacts predominantly on heart and lung, but more and more as we start to look more closely on other physiological systems as well. And so that cumulative impact, the answer is we don't know, but it's not good. There's no way it's beneficial for our health. We just don't know how bad it is. And unfortunately, we're not going to know how bad it is because these are really big, expensive studies. And they're also, large scale epidemiological studies that are really challenging to conduct. What we do know, and this is always the piece that I try to gently get to when people, really want to say, oh, wildfire smoke's no big deal, we don't need to worry about it, is that many of us do feel that way. Wildfire smoke's not a big deal. I can suck it up. I can tolerate it. We have a lot of stoicism. And as I said, cultural tolerance that actually is a wonderful thing. I think that's a better attitude in many cases than if we were going to sort of be Chicken Little, the sky is falling, this is terrible. But what I try to gently remind people is that even if they don't experience wildfire smoke as highly detrimental to their health or impactful, is that I bet there's someone they know that really does. And maybe that's their mother or grandparents, and maybe that's someone in their neighborhood who has asthma. There are people that severely suffer in wildfire smoke. And when we're thinking about how we want as a community to respond to it, those are the folks that we really need to pay the most attention to. So one more little bit of bad news before we move into the good news. As I said, we've had this big growing awareness to pay attention to wildfire smoke that's kind of been increasing in the last several years. But when we talk about Okanagan County and our region, we actually have historically poor winter air quality. And that's predominantly due to the prevalence of people heating their homes with wood stoves and our topography and weather patterns in the winter, whereby we frequently get inversions that trap air close down to the ground. We also, use fire to dispose of agricultural waste and any other kinds of sort of residential burning, land clearing operations. And we know we need dramatic increases in prescribed fire in our public lands and other forests to restore them back to health, to ultimately reduce the severity and prevalence of our wildfires. So we're talking predominantly about wildfire smoke here, but it comes on a backdrop and needs to be considered in the context of these other major contributors to our sources of exposure to smoke as well. I'm going to skip through a few of these. I just really like this slide. I think this is a fun one to look at with regards to a visual. So what you see here is our daily average air quality. And in the upper left-hand corner, this is January 1st of 2002. And then there's a vertical line representing each day of the year. So we have 365 days here represented to the end of 2002. If it's gray, that means for some reason we didn't have data. And so you can see this is from 2002 to yesterday in 2022. And again, green is good, healthy, clean air. And then the closer we get to purple, the worse it is. So if this is the part where I hate being on Zoom rather than in person, but if you guys would come off muting, what does this picture communicate to you about our air quality problems?
I can definitely see that our fire season is July-ish and August, according to this, and the purple, negative bad air days.
Yep. So you can see those wildfire seasons. And I think it's nice to note that, in this 20-year period, we've had some pretty mild wildfire seasons too, right? There's seasons where it's pretty green all the way through the year. What else do you notice?
We are
I
getting.
notice, oh, sorry, go for
No,
it.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Anna.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say, I noticed a lot of yellow and some orange just during the winter months. It's not as green all winter as we maybe perceive it to be.
Yes. And that's, I think, again, to the point I was just making about our backdrop of wildfires, or the backdrop to our wildfire smoke. When you take a look at this, you can see that, so yellow is generally considered moderate air quality. Orange is where we're moving into unhealthy for sensitive groups, but that our air quality is pretty consistently poor through most of the winter. And that's just, I think, an important observation to make when we're talking about cumulative health impacts or general, strategies to protect ourselves from poor air quality or opportunities for improving air quality. All right, so now we're on to the good news. What can we do about all of this? So the vision that we have been circulating, and thank you, Anna, for highlighting this at the very beginning, is something that is growing. This term, a smoke-ready community, is growing in popularity for those working in this space. And generally, there's a few different definitions floating around, but a really concise and easy one is a community that knows its sources of air pollution and is actively working to reduce them. A community whose residents understand health risks associated with wildfire smoke exposure and can protect themselves. And then a community really paying attention and prioritizing vulnerable populations and how to keep them safe. So in all the work that we're doing with regards to building public health infrastructure and thinking about air quality in our region, these are really kind of the principles that I'm always trying to work from. All right, so here comes the interactive portion of the presentation. So Tanya and Lisa, I hope you guys are game because Anna's already taken this quiz. But if you're willing, part of becoming that smoke-ready community, especially for those of us who connect with or care for vulnerable populations like seniors, is becoming more knowledgeable ourselves about air quality and how it potentially is impacting us and people we serve. So I'm going to take you through some information here, and it's great for me too, rather than just telling you. It's always so helpful for me to know where that baseline is for our community with regards to what kind of outreach and specific information we may need to make more visible. So if you are game, it'd be wonderful if you could play along. So how many of you, how many of the two of you know what PM 2.5 is? And you're going to have to actually answer.
Not me. This is Tanya.
Good job,
Don't know.
Tanya.
I
Lisa?
think I'm tied with Tanya's answer.
Excellent. Great. So PM 2.5 stands for particulate matter 2.5 microns in size or smaller. And it's the sorry about that. Let me go back. It's the major pollutant of concern in smoke. And so when you hear us talking about it, oh boy, sorry, battling animation there. So often when people are talking about smoke or air pollution or the AQI, if they're talking about wildfire smoke, they will sometimes use PM 2.5 interchangeably because, well, we'll get into it in just a minute, but this is the major pollutant of concern in smoke. And you can see over on the right-hand side, just how tiny these little particles are. They result from incomplete combustion. So you can actually, this is the same thing that's coming out of the tailpipe, or one of the things that's coming out of the tailpipes of cars that we're also concerned about. But basically, they're actually sort of physical carbon, organic material, elemental carbon, and then they can have sort of hitchhiker chemicals on them that can also be harmful to human health. They're so small that they stay airborne for a very long time, and then we can inhale them extremely deep into our lungs, so far down, all the way down to the bottom of our lungs, basically, where you just have a two-cell interface between the alveoli and the blood cells right there, the capillaries where oxygen exchange is taking place. And once they're at that interface, they can cross over into the bloodstream and then travel to other parts of the body where they also cause oxidative stress and inflammation. But they can also do damage right at that cellular interface as well, directly to the cell membranes, which is not good for our lungs, as you can imagine. Okay, here's your next chance. So we're just talking about particulate matter 2.5, so you know what PM 2.5 is now. I think this first part's too hard, so instead let's talk about the AQI, the air quality index. So hopefully we just looked at those like green dots on the air quality monitors. Can you tell me what number or what color of the air quality index corresponds to levels considered unhealthy for sensitive groups? At what number or color are we moving into air quality that's unhealthy for sensitive groups?
I believe it was orange is unhealthy for sensitive groups.
Good job, Tanya. Great. And then unhealthy for everyone?
It was the red. Does that sound about right, Lisa?
Yeah, it was like the red and purple. It kind of gets darker as it gets more unhealthy.
That's right. And so unhealthy for sensitive groups, the number, oh, this feels a little bit busy. Let's just look at, so one, you've got the colors, and then the other way we describe this is our level of concern. So there's also a descriptor that goes with it. Green is good, yellow is moderate, orange is unhealthy for sensitive groups. And then the air quality index is basically just a simplified scale to give us easier numbers to work with. So the AQI is most frequently what you see reported if you're going and looking for air quality information. They're going to give you a number, and they might say, oh, the AQI is 125 today. It's unhealthy for sensitive groups, or orange. This is really just for your knowledge. This is like expert level stuff. The AQI is derived from the concentration of those tiny particles we were just talking about in a cubic liter of air. So, you can imagine there's a number of particles all floating around. If you were able to swoop all those up and weigh them, and then measure that and express it as a number of micrograms of those particles in that cubic meter of air, these are the numbers. And so because that's a little more complicated, we translate that into an index. So again, expert level, and now you know about PM 2.5 and that it's actually how many of those particles are in a certain volume of air that gives us this air quality index. But really, this is what I want us all to become more familiar with over here, these first three categories. And then unfortunately, this is cut off a little bit, but this is easy to see. For each of these categories, then, we also have a description of what kinds of behavioral modifications or awareness we might want people to start to take. All right. So Lisa or Tanya, where do you ever check air quality information to go look for it? And if so, where are you looking, or where can one go look?
Yeah, I believe it's airnow.gov that I use.
Awesome.
Airnow.gov.
Lisa, do you ever go looking for air quality information?
I do. I like the Purple Air website. That was the first one I came across, so I've been using that for a little while.
Awesome. So there are lots and lots of places and many, many apps. Our top recommendations are using airnow.gov. The Washington Smoke blog is another amazing resource. And why I really like those first two and list those first two is because you can look at air quality information. You can look at the relationship between often fires as well. Actually pulled these up so we can go look at them. Let's start with airnow.gov. So this is the kind of homepage for airnow.gov. And if you've been there before and told it where you're located, or if you have geolocation enabled, it's going to start with your local air quality. So right now it's 68 in Winthrop, which is in the moderate category. But what I really like is that there are all these other tabs. And so there is so much good information up here. So if you have the time or interest, there are many more questions that you can get answered. Because we collectively in our community are often looking for air quality information during wildfires, this is the second place I like to go, to the fire and smoke map. And it'll take a minute to initialize, but it should probably zoom into our region. Here it goes. And so what's also cool is if I zoom out a little bit, we're seeing here not only just our federal and state level more expensive air monitors, but you're seeing a number of the purple air monitors or other low cost sensors that might be just individuals or hosted by the public show up. And then you also see a little flame for where the fires are. And the third thing that's so cool is that you can see these smoke contours. So I don't know why it is. I like to know it too. People want to know where the smoke's coming from. And so often, it doesn't really matter. It's smoky, but it just, for some reason, like we all sort of have this inherent desire to like know where the smoke's blowing in from. And so what's cool is that these contours will often kind of let you know, oh, look. And so for the summer in the Methow, we've typically either been getting smoke from these Pasayten fires up here, or if the wind switches directions and starts blowing out of the south, we're getting smoke from the Lake Wenatchee fires. We've gotten some smoke from the Bolt fire that's down off of Highway 2 here. And, again, this can be the depressing thing to look at in the summer when the fires are actually ringing our entire region. And so no matter which way the wind's blowing, we're getting smoke. But as I said, there's lots of other cool stuff to look at here. Lisa, here's Purple Air that I already have up. One thing I want to note, because this isn't always obvious to folks, I wonder if I can get this to reload. Oh, it's right here. So the really important thing, I think Purple Air is a really cool tool, and Clean Air Methow actually maintains what we call our Clean Air Ambassador Network, where we have now over 30 Purple Air sensors from the top of Lost River down to Pateros. We have a few up in the valley here, placed with hosts. They're really cool tools. At $200 a pop, they're not quite as accurate as the often tens of thousands of dollars air quality monitors that the state ecology and EPA utilize in place. And so accordingly, we have to do a little bit of correction on those data. And so Lisa, for everyone's information here, there's this box that pops up when you pull up Purple Air, either on your phone or on the computer. And what you always want to make sure you're doing is where it says apply conversion, you want to select US EPA. That's the best conversion factor that will help bring the number that the sensor is reading to a more calibrated for wildfire smoke accurate answer. So we can actually look real quick. I'll take it off and we can see the numbers change, and they're going to go higher. And they're known to overestimate. So they went higher, and then if we throw it back on there, you'll see them come down again. Another bit that's important to keep in mind is that when we have high humidity, the monitors also can't really provide as accurate of numbers during high humidity. So in the morning time, they're often reading higher. If it's sort of a dewy type of morning, they're reading higher than the actual air pollution. So it's just good to kind of keep in mind that I think this is a phenomenally useful tool, but with regards to a truly accurate reading of the air quality, they could be off, and sometimes by a lot. Let me just take a minute to show you guys, especially if you haven't been there before. I also pulled up the Washington Smoke blog. So one thing that's cool that you'll see is the homepage of the Washington Smoke blog actually starts with that AirMethow map. This is the same map displayed in this interface. So it's kind of a one-stop shop with that regards. There is a whole host of authors behind the Washington Smoke blog, like 36 people, experts in health impacts, meteorology. They're from the Forest Service, DNR, Department of Health, EPA, and they all collectively manage this website and make posts relevant in real time to what is being observed in Washington state. And so one went out yesterday on October 11th because there'd been a lot of questions about health. And so Caitlin Kelly from the Department of Health in Washington State put up a post answering some questions about that. You can also see that there are a number of different tabs here with a ton more information, which is really great. But I found that these blog posts, several years ago, I wasn't necessarily recommending this website in Central and Eastern Washington, except for those that really, really wanted to get into it because it was somewhat Western Washington focused. That's completely shifted. And now it's really great representation and attention to what's going on across the entire state, which is really wonderful. So you could take a look. There's some really good informative posts here. And as I said, it changes in real time. All right, let's go back to a few more slides here. Okay, what are the short and longer term health effects of wildfire smoke or PM 2.5? Lisa and Tanya, if you were game to share, do you experience any health effects from wildfire smoke? Does it bother you in any way?
Oh, yes. My kiddos especially are outside sports guys, and so yeah, when it's real smoky like this, a lot of the time, of course, not just health, but they don't get to go out and practice because the air is so unhealthy that it's not safe for anybody to be out there sometimes. But yeah, they and myself. We can get headaches, we can get real sore, scratchy throats, really raw, irritated sinuses, just all of that no good stuff. As far as longer term, I imagine it's going to definitely turn into, asthma or, lung problems or lung disease or respiratory issues if we were to be in it quite a bit more or at longer periods of time or that kind of thing. So that's my thought on that.
Yeah, I'm a mom as well. And I think about those things too, Tanya, for long term. Mm-hmm. How about you, Lisa?
So me and my family noticed, we get the sinus soreness and the headaches, and it's a little bit harder to breathe. But I have noticed me and my husband are former smokers, and other adults in our family who are not former smokers or who never smoked are not coughing as much as we do when we're outside. So yeah, I think that I've just noticed that people who didn't smoke or have never smoked are a little bit better off out there sometimes than some of us former smokers. So yeah, the short-term effects, there's a lot of irritatedness and coughing, but long-term effects, I'm not quite sure of, but I'm curious because that's a lot of, seems like damage it can be doing.
Yeah, I think, to your point, Lisa, wildfire smoke is often compounding health issues that people already have, whether it's that they already have some decreased lung function for any number of reasons, or other, health issues. Wildfire smoke really exacerbates those. So I talked about this a little bit at the beginning of the presentation, but again, the slides can be for reference as well. They're minor to deadly responses. And I think, again, any of us that have lived through wildfire smoke, we're kind of just used to it. I mean, I had a session with Governor Inslee where we had about a dozen people in the room. And it was, I think, 7 weeks since the air quality had cleared. It was a fall session a couple of years ago, and it had been a full 7 or 8 weeks since the wildfire smoke had cleared. And I asked people to give me a show of hands for who was still experiencing a sore throat, a cough, congestion, anything that they felt was related to wildfire smoke. And every single person raised their hand. And I know this is true for me. I'm just kind of congested all the time. I'm like, I can feel that my throat's a little sore right now because we've been in smoke for about 3 to 4 weeks now over here. And that's even with me, I clean my indoor air, I work really hard to reduce my exposures, but I also really enjoy running and being outdoors. And so it's always sort of this calculated balance of, what's most important for my health. So those first few bullet points there, list the more severe responses that people have to wildfire smoke. But another one that, again, as I mentioned, is becoming better characterized is really more these impacts on well-being and mental health. So often people report trouble concentrating, insomnia, depression, a feeling of hypervigilance. And for those who've been in wildfire smoke or wildfires themselves, what truly could be characterized as post-traumatic stress disorder and anxiety around fire season, or what's going to happen. So that's a really important piece, I think, for all of us to begin to start paying more attention to as we think about how we're going to live healthfully through repeated seasons like this. And it's worth mentioning, we hypothesized at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, because it was a respiratory infection, that there might be some interactions between wildfire smoke. Those played out in the data very clearly, that because both impact the lungs, exposure to smoke worsens the symptoms in those that already have COVID-19, as well as makes people more susceptible to developing or contracting COVID-19. And we know that many of those that are most vulnerable to wildfire smoke are also the vulnerable populations that we worry about getting COVID-19 and having a more severe response. So still worth mentioning. Okay, so I've talked about vulnerable populations a number of times. Could you guys give a stab at naming at least 3 of these sensitive or vulnerable populations who are more susceptible to the health impacts of wildfire smoke? We can start with the obvious.
I know our well, those that are suffering from respiratory diseases. I don't want to take them all, but of course our Medicare population a lot of the time. Lisa, go for it.
Definitely the children's group. Even though I usually work with seniors, I've noticed that they're a very sensitive group.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So you're absolutely right. People with heart or lung disease or diabetes or previously suffered a stroke, infants and children, seniors, pregnant women and their fetuses, and then people with high exposures. So these are folks who either due to their work or their housing conditions really can't get out of the smoke. And certainly those who also have less access to health care. And what I think is, important to note is that these groups, again, to my point of talking to people who think wildfire smoke's really not that bad, these groups make up probably 55 to 60% of Okanagan County's population when you add that all up. And so we all know someone, probably many, many someones who fall into this vulnerable populations category that really do need to think about taking steps to reduce their exposures. So I'm going to do a little time check. I like that we've been able to talk as we go, but there's only 9 minutes left. And so let me try and get through a few things because we haven't talked about interventions yet. But seniors are especially at risk due to a higher prevalence of pre-existing disease, declining physiological defense mechanisms, such as a not so tip-top immune system, and then other factors like low socioeconomic status or isolation. During poor air quality, what you might want to look for, I didn't know how many people we might have with this presentation that are engaging directly with seniors, but we're really working a lot with healthcare providers or community health workers and asking them to begin to check in specifically about how people are doing and how they're feeling during wildfire smoke. And some things that we might see are palpitations, unusual fatigue, lightheadedness, shortness of breath, chest tightness, or pain in their neck and shoulder. And, these are really indicative of people that are likely needing to go seek medical attention if they're experiencing these types of symptoms and already have an existing condition. So to my point. All right, so here's where we get to what we can do about this. Lisa or Tanya, one last time, I think this is the last question we have here. What are the effective interventions that we know can work to protect health in places like Okanagan County where we have smoke year after year?
Not highly effective wildfire smoke intervention. Gosh, I'm afraid I don't know a whole lot. I mean, I guess I'm sorry, I want to make sure I understand, but like ways to prevent the wildfires from beginning, or ways to protect ourselves individually from?
Yes, the latter. More if it's smoky outside, what can we do? Like, how can we protect health?
Gotcha. Okay, sorry. So, well, we are all familiar with the masks. Those are always a good one. And then if possible, I know not a lot of our residents are able to, but if you can stay inside where you've got filtration system and all of that working for you. But not a lot of our, I mean, not all of our residents have access to that.
Yeah.
That's a pity. Yeah.
So one of the things we came over to talk with Lisa about initially was a box fan air cleaner distribution program that we were running, because you're absolutely right that a lot of people don't have the ability to clean their indoor air, Tanya, but that is kind of the number one way we're thinking about trying to keep people safe long term, is that we ask them to stay out of the smoke, as best possible, stay indoors. But there's no real guarantee that your indoor air is much cleaner than your outdoor air unless you are actively filtering it. And so that's been our big outreach and communication piece. And these low-cost air filters where you just use a box fan have become really popular because they're only about $40. They're simple to assemble, and they're pretty accessible to lots of people. So I'm just going to do a little pitch here again for local resources. Oh, that was not I wanted to go to this one. So cleanairmethow.org. From our homepage, we have this tab where it says wildfire smoke information. And there's a few different things here. The other thing we pushed big this summer was a smoke ready checklist. And if you go to that other site I just popped up, and I'll show you that in a minute, anyone can actually download this. It's on that other website as well. We also have this available as a rack card. We have many, many copies and funding to distribute these all over the region. So if that's something Tanya or anyone watching this thinks that they would be interested in sharing with their population served, would be more than happy to get some of those into your hands. The idea of the smoke ready checklist is really to piggyback on the concept of things we need to do to get ready for wildfires, sort of our basic emergency preparedness there. So we have 5 simple steps to get ready for wildfire smoke. Gathering N95 masks. If we have to be outside, we know N95 masks are a good way to filter the air before we breathe it into our lungs. Ensure you can create clean indoor air. There are a lot of online resources that can walk you through how to do that with a variety of different housing conditions or situations. If you just have, one small air purifier or one box fan, maybe what this looks like at night is that really like everyone moves into one bedroom and you close up that room and run the box fan and feel good about having everybody sleep in one space where the air is clean. Obviously, an important caveat there is that if it's 95 degrees outside and your house is heating up indoors, that's not good conditions for anyone to be comfortable, and it can rapidly become very dangerous. So unfortunately, in our region where lots of people don't have air conditioning, this idea of balancing the indoor temperature and the ability to filter our air is always really important. So these links show you some videos. You can go right to how to make your own clean air fan. It literally takes like 90 seconds. Know how to get air quality information. We walked through some of that earlier. You guys are doing great. Can check that one off the list. If we're talking about readiness, make a plan for vulnerable household members. So really knowing if you have someone that is really susceptible and you have the potential to relocate them out of the smoke. I know a lot of people have shipped their kids off to relatives in places on the west side that had cleaner air, if they have the possibility to do that when we've lived through really long fire seasons here. If you have the potential to arrange any travel or otherwise to try to avoid being around when it's likely to be smoky, that's great. A plan could also include just things as simple as making sure that there's a safe, cool place indoors for them to be. And then this last bit, consider ideas to stay mentally strong and engaged, really attends to what we're talking about, is that wildfire smoke can be really stressful, especially when it just goes on and on. And so recognizing where your social networks lie, who you might want to be responsible for checking in on, who might need your help, and then recognizing what some basic coping strategies are that you might use to help you kind of have your mental fortitude to get through a long season. Okay, so we are at the end of our time together here, and I think what I would just like to do, so I left several slides, as I said, in this deck so that I'll have Lisa share this so we can all have this as a resource. But this slide lists local smoke ready resources and programs that you may be able to access if you're interested. And then these are questions for community discussion. I'm always open and receptive and desiring to understand people's experiences and needs and questions about air quality. And then there's a few different slides that address what can I do to improve air quality. We said, we can't control wildfire smoke. That's coming for us, but we can take steps like thinking about cleaner home heating, thinking about alternatives to outdoor burning to improve air quality at other times of the year. And then another big, what can I do? We've been running a large fundraising as well as a grant funded campaign to get box fan air filters to every single resident in Okanagan County. Our calculation is that only about 20 to 25% of folks are actively filtering their indoor air currently. And lots of people do need assistance with the ability to purchase an air filter. So we're hopefully looking towards a vision where all built spaces can assure clean indoor air. Okay, and then we have some research studies too that there's links to and some other online resources for everybody. Oops, I just clicked on one of them accidentally. But yeah, so with that, here's contact information. I'd love to hear from anyone anytime if you have any questions or any of these resources would be helpful for you in your work. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Liz. Do you want to talk about your wood stove exchange program really quick?
Absolutely. Anna, would you like to talk about the wood stove exchange program? Or I'm happy to. It's actually another person at Clean Air Methow who manages that program. Sorry, and I don't need to. Okay, or go ahead.
Oh no, I can talk a little bit about it. But basically, it is an EPA funded program, or ecology, sorry, and it funds stipends or entire replacements of wood stoves for more efficient wood stoves or pellet stoves. And right now it goes in all areas of Okanogan County: Methow, Carlton, Tonasket, Omak, Okanogan, Mazama, and Twisp. And language was recently updated for outside of city limits, and that will be going on through the spring of 2023. Right now we have 12 people waiting to get their stove replaced and 3 applications being processed, but we still do have applications ready and can be distributed to folks who are interested in that.
Thanks, Anna. So this is an income qualified program. And I just pulled up cleanairmethow.org, and you can see there's a button right here for the wood stove exchange program. It's a really simple application. And there's some more details right here. But yeah, this is, I mean, it's kind of unbelievable. If I believe the household income is $40,000, but we encourage people, if there's ability because of household number and size, etc. That's not a hard and fast number, but you can get a brand new EPA certified wood stove, your old one taken out, your new one replaced, all completely for free under this program. So it's pretty amazing. So you can go to our website and download the application or send us an email, or there's a phone number as well if you have any questions about that. 45,000.
Well, wonderful. Elizabeth, I would love to get a hold of some of those flyers if you have them. I can put my address in the chat.
Yeah,
And yeah, I'd love to have some of those.
Definitely.
And thank you for the presentation, ladies.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks for coming, Tanya.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah.
You guys have a wonderful day.
You too.
Thanks.
Oh, thank you so much, you guys, for coming in and doing that for us. I can't wait to get it on our YouTube channel. I'll send you guys a link in case you want to share it with other people or just check it out.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you so much, ladies.